Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about sucky systems. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, as a software engineer, do you agree that with the opinion that every system eventually sucks? Well, no. Let me explain my thoughts on this, because this is a very complicated, nuanced thing, and it really depends on how you want to view it. I mean, an example would be where if we talk about a very small system, it's going to be really hard for you to make a Hello World application suck. It's really the continuing growth of a system that leads to it sucking. Which is sort of it's actually the sort of thing that I try to tell people, which is the best way I think to understand why software is so difficult as opposed to product development, like standard product development, like, you know, making a saw or a hammer or something like that. Now, the reason being is that usually when you create a physical product, you create a unit of something. In other words, you have, for better or for worse, you have one unit of that thing that you ship, you sell to your customer, and your goal is to get that one specific unit into the ideal state, which is, you know, everybody's happy, loves it, etc., etc. But once you have done that, you are paid as a one-time type of thing, or like it's a transaction usually, and you don't have to do much more. You then create a new line of the said product, and you might release new versions of the product, but you don't have to change the product that you just sold, which is what happens in software development. The problem with software is that it always changes, it continuously grows, but unless, unfortunately, as with policies and politics and well, not necessarily politics, but with certain mental commitments or like theoretical agreements and legal agreements sometimes in the world, you can sort of, when a new decision is made, you can sort of forget about the old commitments, or you can sometimes you can make them null and void, not always, but in many cases you can move forward if everybody agrees that this is the way to go forward. But with software, it's not the same thing, because you already have invested a lot into the code and like the systems and so forth, which means that if you have decided to go in a radically new direction, it's sort of like society itself in a way, where if a country like we sort of think of global warming and things like that. Now, why is this such a difficult situation for us all? Well, because a lot of the world economy and like a lot of the things that we take for granted every day, it's built into the entire way we do things, which means that if we're gonna fix this thing, it's a fairly radical change that has to happen, that has a lot of impact on everything from the economy to people's convenience, like all these sorts of things that, you know, we've gotten used to. And a lot of people don't like that sort of change because it's a difficult change to make. It's a very necessary one, but it is difficult. Software works the same way, where if in some cases you're able to not maybe rewrite the whole system, but you have to patch it and things like that. And the reason why people think that every system sort of eventually suck, why that opinion is there, is because the complexities of getting a sustainable software solution right forever, basically, or over a long period of time, is so difficult that only a select few people under the right circumstances, I would say, are qualified to make it happen. And I don't remember who said it, but I think that I read this quote somewhere. Any system or any form of government that requires genius is doomed to fail. It will not scale, and that is the root of the problem. Software sucks not because it's sort of like math or like anything, like the tool. There's nothing really wrong with the tool. It is the people that apply the tool that are the problem. People are flawed, they have different backgrounds, and they are influenced by silly things and like all these sort of human factors that play in, which of course the mathematicians sort of omit it from their equations. Software developers who are not really thinking straight omit that from like their design of the system, like the code and so forth, because in theory everything is perfect, everything is, you know, everything is nothing is a curve, everything is just a linear increase or a decrease of things, everything is linear, right? That's not reality, right? And that's why I think that I can agree with that eventually all systems suck, but it's not, it doesn't have to be that way. It's just that the claim that in order to fix it we just need better people also is equally naive, or like it's silly, because it's sort of like saying that world peace is impossible, but it's not. It's just that humanity at this point is not evolved enough to make it happen. And that's why I want to reserve my answer and say that no, I don't think that every system will eventually suck. I just think that it is so difficult that we are just, at this point in our development as a species, we are not able to do this in a way where it doesn't quote-unquote suck in some fashion. There are absolutely pockets of like truly innovative people who are so good at what they do that they design systems that will scale basically forever. I'm trying to learn from these people. I'm trying to sort of understand, because I truly believe that this is just my personal dragon to slay. I believe that the most difficult thing in software development is not naming and it's not caching, which is very difficult problems. I believe that the most difficult problem is maintaining productivity and quality of service over time. That is what I believe is the most difficult thing there is. And so that is my personal like journey, what I'm trying to figure out with the ways, like I've worked in a few companies, I've been leading teams, I've been part of teams, I've done a lot of different things, right? And the consistent thing that I keep on discovering is that when things are not working, it is not really because there's a technical problem with the situation. It is that you have office politics, you have flawed designs or changes in requirements, you have a lot of personal like beefs between like people, or like you have people who don't really have a good physical manual process to maintain things, which cascades into the system. There are all these factors that make up a quote-unquote sucky system. But I've reached a point now, I feel at the very least, where I can with fair amount of confidence say that actually whenever I have a problem with software development and systems today, it has almost nothing to do with the code. It has to do with other factors than the code, and I'm very proud over the progress I've made in this area. I feel very fortunate enough to have been involved in so many different really quote-unquote bad systems that I've started to learn from like the legacy systems and like sort of what decisions people have made before me, and sort of derived that, all right, so they were thinking this, they did this, that didn't work out so well, okay, and that didn't work out so well, could we try this? Yeah, that seemed to have worked out really well. And so you sort of start deriving what patterns are going to work and what's not going to work. And I have a few personal philosophies that has been helping me a lot, and I'm actually happy because now I've reached a point where one of my favorite things, which is sort of my manager sort of using that, is that they send me in to some of the worst places you can imagine. It's almost a little bit like being special ops. You get sent in, you get to look at a system that is either like that is not performing, a team that is not, you know, something is not really working, and now your job is to, all right, how do we fix this problem? And I've never really found a situation where I couldn't fix it. It's sort of like putting your hands down in the dirt. Like, you can fix it, it's just not a nice experience. So what I want you to take away from this is that I agree to a point that the opinion that every system eventually sucks is true, but I think it's true not because it is that it's a given that that's going to happen. It depends on how you'd want to define things, because I mean, a small system, it will never suck. It's the scaling of things that causes the issues. And if we really think about that, why is scaling such a difficult thing for us humans? I'll tell you why. Well, this is my theory. Scaling is difficult because the human brain cannot process as a unit the scale when it gets too big. When a problem becomes so big, too big, humans can no longer conceive of it. Our brains cannot process that amount of information. Some people are very good at it. Some people are they're good at compartmentalization and looking at pieces and breaking down big problems into small problems. But on average, people are really shit at this. And it's the same thing in society, I argue, where a lot of the reasons why a lot of stuff is very difficult to do is because we simply as a species have a problem dealing with problems that are that big. But that also tells us something. The problem isn't that it cannot be solved. The problem is us. We are not able at this moment with our current means of doing things to actually solve that sort of issue. And I've found that in the right circumstances, with the right people, in the right with the right problems and so forth, a lot of issues, especially in software development, can be fixed. Even the worst systems that you can imagine can become really, really great. But it really comes down to having the right people involved. Smart, talented, good-hearted, willing people who are willing to get their hands dirty and do the thing that is necessary, and then having the surrounding ecosystem support them in that endeavor. I've seen great successes with this, and the thing that usually makes the opposite of that is this office politics. Everybody locks down, or they're not collaborating. You have silly people making silly decisions based on ignorance, etc., etc. All of that dysfunctionality is there. It's real. That's the real issue, in my opinion, to fix. But that doesn't mean that it can't be solved. So I don't want to say that it's inevitable that things will always go bad, because I think if we solve the root problem, it will work. Have a great day.